Welcome everyone to the Community IT Innovators webinar on the accidental to intentional nonprofit tech leader. If you've ever never applied for a tech job, but somehow you became the person that everyone turns to for tech help and assistance at your nonprofit, then this is the right webinar for you. And we're so glad you're here today. So today we're going to learn how to transform your experience as a problem solver into a professional career as a nonprofit tech leader from two people who have lived that journey. My name is Carolyn Woodard. I'm the Outreach Director for Community IT. I'll be the moderator today. I'm very, very happy and excited to hear from our experts, but first I want to go over our learning objectives. So we're going to talk today about how you go from fixing things to being asked for strategic advice. We're going to learn the 4 bridges for transformation from accidental to intentional techie. I'm really excited to hear more about that. We're going to talk about how do you translate your work into mission impact. So this is a perennial problem and so exciting to get some insights into how you can make that case that technology is important for your mission. And then we're going to leave with what you are going to learn and talk about one action that you will take this week to start building the bridge that speaks to you of the 4 bridges that we're going to learn about. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to our speakers. Hugo, would you like to introduce yourself?
Welcome. I'm Hugo Castro. I spent the past 15 years becoming really, really good at a job that I never applied for. My first big project when I started working at Democracy Fund, a private foundation as an operations manager, was bringing in a managed service provider to transition all of our tech infrastructure from a family office to the foundation. That's how I came to know Community IT. Community IT became our MSP, and I managed the MSP while I was at Democracy Fund, which, sounds pretty straightforward until you're the person coordinating network installations, AV systems, ILMO migration. So thankfully, through an MSP, we're able to do that. But I also was onboarding 5 to 10 people every couple of months. We were growing a growing foundation, revamping our contracting process, and moving our approval processes from email to like an actual system, right? So there was a lot of different things going on. Then came an office move, implementing PGP encryption. I became the admin for Okta, Microsoft 365, Google Workspace, Meraki, CrowdStrike, and just about 15 other systems. And then eventually we hired our first in-person IT staff to really help get all this stuff in place. My next role was at a fiscally sponsored growing organization with about 14 people where I did another office move. And I lean into what it's like to be in the IT person on top of everything else that you're supposed to do as a director of operations. This was also around early 2020, which seems like 100 years ago. So we did an office move, and literally 2 weeks later, we had to go fully remote because of the pandemic. So we have to quickly pivot and figure out how do we do that work. So Zoom meetings, webinars, all that kind of stuff. And then most recently, I worked as a director of operations at TAG, the Technology Association of Grant Makers, where I did a complete digital transformation, moving our association management system from a legacy platform to Salesforce and a WordPress deployment. And that's where I met Gozi. So after 15 years of this, I realized 2 things. One, this journey from accidental to intentional is something that almost everyone in the nonprofit tech and operation goes through. And 2, nobody should have to figure it out by yourself. So now I also run Flourish Collective, working with nonprofits to exactly enact these kind of technology transformations. And I also write the Accidental Techie newsletter, which is basically me documenting everything that I wish somebody would have told me when I started on this journey 15 years ago. All right. Gozi, would you want to introduce yourself?
Thank you for that. And I'm really excited to be joining you. I'm Gozi Egbuonu. I am the Director of Programs at the Technology Association of Grantmakers, otherwise known as TAG. And as Ugo shared, that's where we met, but my career in accidental techie actually began not in the philanthropic sector, but actually in the fashion, in the copy and copywriting world in terms of e-commerce. And so in those early days of e-commerce and moving to getting all of your things shipped to you as opposed to going into the brick and mortars was my opportunity to really see what it was like working in this fast-paced startup world. And of course, we were just kind of learning as we were going. And as my career continued to grow, I started to really understand that there there's this technical component that you need to have. And I never was, trained in SEO, but I had to learn it in order to support a lot of the copywriting expectations. And so that was kind of my foray into technology, and then ultimately continued to do that in fashion, but on the promotion side. So I had to handle the promotions for global events that we would do, and had to be really, really good at checking my emails to make sure I didn't set anything on sale that shouldn't have been on sale. But also realizing the technical components that go into when something bad does happen on a website, when you have to refresh it. And so from that on, definitely continued in that kind of role of trying to learn these technologies, and then ultimately went into working for a SaaS company now known as Bonterra. And that's actually how I got introduced to tag, working at this space where we were really trying to encourage growing the technology infrastructure for nonprofits through investments in their technology infrastructure, was how I got to learn a lot about tag. And there was a similarity there. And so taking all of these really important things about technology and technology infrastructure, being able to talk about it fluently has been really beneficial to my work, but ultimately I needed to go deeper. And so hopefully I'll be sharing a little bit more about how I started to do that process. And it, takes time. Sometimes it doesn't all come clearly to you at the beginning, but by the end, you start to see some ways to, help yourself and ultimately grow your career. So I'm excited to talk to you all today.
Thank you so much, Gozi and Ugo, for being here. Really excited to hear about your journeys and get people in the audience as well to start sharing. But before we begin, if you're not familiar with Community IT, I have to tell you a little bit about us. So we're a 100% employee-owned managed services provider. We provide outsourced IT support. We work exclusively with nonprofit organizations, and our mission is to help nonprofits accomplish their missions through the effective use of technology. We are big fans of what well-managed IT can do for your nonprofit. We serve nonprofits across the United States. We've been doing this for 25 years. It's our 25th year anniversary year. We are technology experts. We are consistently given the MSP 501 recognition for being a top MSP, which is an honor we received again in 2025 for the 8th year in a row. And we believe we're the only MSP on that list serving nonprofits exclusively. So I want to remind everyone that for these presentations, Community IT is vendor agnostic. So we only make recommendations to our clients, only based on their specific business needs. We never try to get a client into a product because we get any kind of benefit or incentive from that. But we do consider ourselves a best of breed IT provider. So it's our job to know the landscape, what tools are available, reputable, widely used, and we make recommendations on that basis for our clients based on their business needs, priorities, and budget. We're going to leave as much time as we can for Q&A with our experts at the end. Please submit your questions through the chat feature anytime today. We got a lot of good questions at registration. So we're going to try and answer as many of those as we can. Anything we can't get to, please join us and our experts today in our community on Reddit at r/nonprofit IT management. We're going to continue to answer some questions over there about 30 minutes after the webinar, so until about 4:30 Eastern. You can find all of the videos, podcasts, transcripts, articles on our website. We don't have a paywall. It's all freely shared information. So we hope some of those past webinars also will be useful to you. A little bit more about us. It's, as I said, our mission is to create value for the nonprofit sector through well-managed IT. We also identify 4 key values as employee owners that define our company: trust, knowledge, service, and balance. So we seek to always treat people with respect and fairness, to empower our staff, clients, and sector to understand and use technology effectively, to be helpful with our talents, and we recognize that the health of our communities is vital to our well-being and that work is only part of our lives. So with that said, I'm going to hand it over to you, Ugo, to share your presentation with us and let you and Gozi take it away.
Thank you so much, Carolyn. And I just want to, thank you and Community IT for the invitation for Gozi and I to come and share this framework. So that's what we're here to talk about today. So how do you go from being the person who accidentally became the tech person to being intentional about where your career goes? Because I did this the hard way. I learned by trial and error across different organizations. And what Gozi and I realized is that there's actually a framework to this transformation. You don't have to just stumble your way through it like I did. And that's what we're going to be doing today. So before we go any further, further, I want to hear from you in the chat. Tell me, where are you joining? Well, you already joined us from, but how do you ended up in your tech role in 3 words or less? It can be my boss quit, or it could be whatever. Mhm.
I see someone
Necessity.
responded necessity.
Yep. Youngest person at the office. Yep. Yeah. No one else will do the job. Yep. Hopefully you're seeing a pattern here for you all, right? Like this, you're not alone on this. Uh yeah, IT director retire 100%. That usually that happens. Yep. Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Perfect, folks. Let me ask you a few more questions really quick to see if you're truly an accidental techie. So question number one, do you ever apply for a job with the words technology, IT, or systems in the title? If you say no, or you're thinking no, you might be an accidental techie.
Mhm.
Question number two, has anyone ever said to you, this should be pretty simple, right? And then they proceed to describe something that was absolutely not simple. If you're cringing right now, you're definitely an accidental techie, right? Salesforce implementation or doing this quick like website update, right? In question number three, have you ever trained someone on a system application you learned about 48 hours earlier and you hope they wouldn't ask a question you couldn't answer? Yes, 100%, right? So welcome to the club, folks. Here's what makes you an accidental techie. You found yourself in this role by chance, not by choice. You became the tech person because you figured out something out that one time, or because someone quit, or because you were the only one that could make the database work. And now you spend most of your time reacting to immediate needs. Password resets, system crashes, quick questions that turn into 3-hour troubleshooting sessions. But here's what I learned after 15 years and hundreds of conversations with people just like you. This doesn't have to be your story forever. The shift from reactive to intentional isn't just about your personal growth, though that is important. It is about organizational impact. When you move from being the person who fixes things to being the person who shapes technology strategically, your whole organization benefits. Better decisions get made, resources get used more effectively, technology actually starts supporting your mission instead of getting in the way. That transformation is what we're here to talk about, going from accidental to an intentional leader, from reactive to a strategic. And it's absolutely possible. So here's the question that drives everything that we're going to be talking about today. How can someone transition from being a fixer to a strategic advisor for leadership? This session is going to focus on that journey, emphasizing that it requires a genuine shift on self-positioning, relationship building, project selection, and communication. This approach, we term it the 4-bridge framework. And I want to be honest with you, this is not a quick fix, right? It's not by the end of the week, you're going to be like a strategic leader. It's not a rebranding exercise. It's not just speak more in meetings. It's a genuine shift in how you position yourself, how you build relationships, and what you choose to work on, and how you talk about what you do. And we call it the 4-bridge framework. So let me introduce that to you really quick. The way we're going to be doing this transformation is I'll talk about each of the bridges, and then Gozi is going to explain from her experience how she was able to see that on her own, right? So here's how I think about this transformation. There are 4 bridges you need to be able to get from the accidental shore to the intentional shore: skills, relationships, projects, and communication. You don't have to build all 4 at once. That's probably a recipe for doing nothing. You pick the one that fits where you are right now and you start there. Like I say, Gosi and I are going to talk through you each one, and I'll set up the shift, what you need to shift, and she's going to share what it looked like in her work at TAG and before then. We'll give you concrete actions that you can take this week, not someday, this week. Gosi.
What I love about this framework is that it respects that we all come in at different places. I came to TAG with a background in community organizing and program development and a deep interest in ethical technology. My path through these bridges looks completely different from someone who came up through IT, operations, you get it. And that's the point. This is about where you're going, not where you started.
Yeah. So let's talk about the first bridge, the skills bridge. This is your ticket from fixing chaos to crafting mastery, right? In accidental tech mode, usually you're being the firefighter for tech disaster. Something goes wrong, you learn just enough to patch it up, and then it's off to the next crisis. So you move from crisis to crisis. In intentional mode, you become, I guess, the maestro of your own career. You choose the skills you want to be famous for, and you hold them with purpose. For me, when I was at Democracy Fund, that was systems thinking and change management, right? I pursue a human-centered design certification because I kept seeing technology implementations kind of stall a little bit because, we're doing a lot of different things at once, and we needed more change management to help people really take on the new technologies that we're using. So it wasn't that we were bad at technology, we just needed better change management. I also attended NTEN's conference, NTC, every year. I joined a group of tech decision makers in DC, and that was really helpful for me as well. So Gosi, how do you get your strategic skill development?
Well, my skill bridge for strategic skill development was pursuing my doctorate in behavioral health while I was working at TAG, and more recently completing a program in AI and healthcare through Johns Hopkins. So these weren't required for my role. I pursue them because I believe the future of philanthropy and technology is inseparable for our understanding of human behavior and ethics. At TAG, that meant I could lead conversations about tech adoption from a people's first lens, not just a systems lens. And I became the person on the executive team who could bridge those worlds more comfortably. The skill I chose wasn't a technical certification, it was depth, the kind of thinking that lets you see technology decisions in their full human context. That choice shaped every single program I've helped tag and will continue also to influence how we look at our publications and reports moving forward.
Yeah. Let me, before we talk about which skill to develop, I want to share a framework that I came across from this guy, Gay Hendricks, in a book called The Big Leap. In this book, he identifies 4 zones where we operate. 3 of them keep us stuck, and 1 kind of unlocks everything, right? So when he talks about in the book, the zone of incompetence is things that you don't enjoy and aren't good at. You know the feeling, you're frustrated, you wish somebody else was doing this. Somebody else absolutely should be doing that, right? Then it comes to zone of competence. These are things that you can do just fine. Here's the thing, like others can do them just as well, usually faster and better. This is maintenance work. It's fine, but it's not strategic. Then it comes the zone of excellence, right? This is where most accidental techies, most of us get stuck. You're good at this work, maybe better than most people. It's comfortable. You know how to do it, but it drains you, right? You just, at the end of it, you just feel tired, right? Your passion dies the longer you stay here. And that's a warning sign for you. I want to talk about the zone of genius. This is where kind of, if you've ever been, kind of the time disappears. You're doing what you're uniquely gifted to do. It feels effortless to do it. It kind of looks like magic to everyone else. This is your zone. So here's what happens when you are building your skill bridge. You start developing skills in your zone. You stop developing skills in your zone of incompetence, incompetence and excellence. You start asking, what skill will move me into my zone of genius? That's the strategic skill gap we're identifying. Not what I need to learn to fix the next problem, but what I need to be excellent at what to do in the work that I'm doing. Obviously, nowadays, if you're in tech, everything is about AI. I highly suggest folks to learn more into it, but use your genius, right? You don't have to be vibe coding everything. You can actually learn lean to your zone of genius on how your organization can implement artificial intelligence or not at your organization. And there's a tons of different skills that you can think of, right? These are the action steps that we're sharing with you. So this week, you pick one strategic skill, not a fixed skill, a skill that moves you towards where you want to be in your career. Ask yourself, if I could be known as the expert in one thing at my organization, what will create the most value? and start there. In the next 30 days, take one course, join a community of practice, end-to-end, tag, there's plenty out there, and document what you learn, not for yourself, do it in teaching language. Write a Slack post, run a lunch and learn, share it with your manager or ED. Teaching cements expertise and builds visibility at the same time, right? So take a course not for the sake of taking it, but use it to teach others how to do what you learn. Anything you want to reinforce on this, Gozi?
Thank you. Yes. As you were talking, I was just thinking about the, I just really wanted to add that I don't want you to assume that your employer will fund a lot of this work. It's one of these things where, even at TAG, I've seen members invest in their team's professional development, and the return is real and it's very impactful. But if the budget isn't there, there are free resources. So, think of N10, TechSoup, community forums. They're all legitimate starting points. I used a lot of Google and Coursera. I highly recommend folks, leaning into those resources as well. Do not get stifled from the fact that maybe it isn't being invested in at your organization in some formal way.
Yeah, thank you, Gozi. Let's talk about the relationships bridge. So this is about moving from being the go-to fixer to becoming the trusted advisor. So usually in accidental mode, people call you when things break. You're helpful, but you're invisible in strategic conversations. In intentional mode, you're in the room before decisions are made. So before that CRM gets chosen, you're in the room before you have to figure out how to implement that CRM that somebody decided to buy at your organization. For me, the different organizations that I worked at, it looked like setting up meetings across all departments to talk about how we were serving them. At Democracy Fund, we became a mission-driven operations team. That means that we were servant leaders. We're asking how we might be able to be in service of the mission of the organization. One of the things that I did as well there is that I implemented a program where once a month, staff will get paired randomly with someone from another team to have coffee chats. That broke down silos. We're able to kind of bring out any issues before they became like big issues because people were meeting from different departments that usually wouldn't often meet. So, Gosi, how do you become a trusted advisor?
That's a great question. Well, at TAG, my role is really built around relationships with members, with sector thought leaders, with practitioners who are all doing incredible work in philanthropy tech. But the bridge I had to build wasn't just external, it was internal. When I joined TAG, I had to earn my seat at the strategic thought partner as a strategic thought partner on our team. And that didn't happen because of my title. It happened because I was consistently showing up curious, not just as a program implementer. I asked questions about the why behind technology decisions, not just the what. I facilitated conversations between members and subject matter experts and created space for people to think out loud. Over time, that made me someone people wanted in the room, not just someone who could deliver a great event. And so that coffee chat principle translates everywhere. I've helped build partnerships that, brought in at least 100K in investment by first understanding what a funder cared about, not by pitching. Relationships built on listening compound over time. And I really think it's one of the critical skills people really should really invest in: active listening, deep listening.
100%. I think listening is key, especially as accidental techies. We like to explain a lot of things. And at one time, we have to probably just, like, for a lack of a better word, just shut up for a second and listen to what the needs of the other person or programs are. These are the action steps for you this week. So schedule one conversation that has nothing to do with fixing something. It's a 20-minute listen as a program director. I saw somebody from Florida. So maybe it is for you. You take him out for a Cuban sandwich for a Cubano. That's perfect, Cubano and coffees. And ask them, what's one technology challenge that's slowing down your team? Don't go in with solutions, go in with questions. In your next meeting, maybe offer a perspective instead of waiting to be asked. And start building your peer network, right? This is a pattern that is across all the 4 skills. Talk to your peers, like this webinar right now, right? There's, other 30, 40 other people that are accidental techies just like you, right? You can join the Accidental Techie newsletter community as well, right? People doing your job at other organizations are an invaluable resource for you. That's super, super, super important, right? Anything you want to reinforce here, Gussie?
Yeah, I mean, I would push on the peer network piece. I mean, look at us. We were working remotely, although we were in the same state at one point, but that peer network was really critical, and I really learned how to navigate that through my, working closely with Ugo at our organization. But I also got to co-host a podcast that it's in hiatus now, but we called it the Questioning Everything podcast, and partly because it forces me to stay in conversation with people outside my immediate world, and so. Of course, you don't need a podcast, but please, I recommend finding your version of that. The sector is small. The relationships you build now will follow you. And it is really critical to understand how to really nurture those relationships from authentic places and ultimately in ways that enrich you, but also enrich the sector and the work that you're doing.
Yeah, 100%. Um, when we talk about the third bridge, this is the projects bridge. We want to focus on transforming chaos into strategic achievements. So when you are in the operating the accidental techie mode, your project list usually resembles a collection of unresolved issues, persistent complaints, and birthday reminders, right? The latest update, somebody's laptop broke, we need to push this update to a bunch of different people. Oh, oops, we found out that there was a leak on this application that we use. So now we need to like check a bunch of different stuff, right? In intentional mode, you become the missionary conductor. You're proposing projects that not only captivate but also propel your organization forward. You're not waiting for challenges to arise. You are identifying unique opportunities before anyone else notices, right? Honestly, I mean, this bridge represents a monumental transformation, particularly when your schedule is already packed to capacity. So this is where you create what I call win for all solutions. A win for you, a win for the other person, a win for the organization, and a win for the whole. Here, you need to be documenting everything so you can teach and you pass it on, right? I think that's one of the things with accidental tech is that we are moving from firefighting to firefighting that we forget to document. So one way is you almost kind of work yourself out of the job, right? So you can focus on the strategic stuff, right? By documenting things, eventually somebody else can take over some of the different fires that you're putting out. So you need to focus on intentional and strategic projects. And we want to be intentional, not arrogant, right? You're not choosing projects that only fit you, but like I mentioned before, it's a win for all kind of solutions. One book that I highly recommend here is a book that maybe came out a few years ago. It's called Indistractable: How to Control Your Attention and Choose Your Life. This book has really, really good, down to earth and frameworks on how you can better use your time in a way that it just frees you up to do more, really. And it's about saying no to a lot of different things. It's your phone, right? Like the distraction. It's Slack notifications, right? Or team notifications. Those are, drive us all of us crazy, but distract us for doing actual meaningful work. For me, it looked like working on projects that save organizational time so we can focus on mission development, fund development, and doing more of the things that we wanted to do to achieve our mission, right? So for example, when I mentioned earlier, I moved our contracting system from an approval email to an MVP, to a most viable minimum product, which was kind of like a Trello board that we were able to do that in, right? That saved us about like 10 hours a week. Then after that, it was more formalized. And we were able to kind of like give people more insight into stages of the different contracting process, payments, and so on. And then eventually became like a dashboard, right? So that not only saved people time, but whenever somebody needed an answer to a question, they didn't have to come to me or somebody on operations, somebody on finance to find the information. There was a place they were able to do it and find the information themselves. So think about these kind of different projects and how you can lead strategic initiatives, right? It's going to look for you, it's going to be different. So I'm not going to tell you what project you need to work on or what project is going to unlock everything, but you have to do this work yourself. Gosi, how do you lead strategic initiatives?
You know, for me, this one, it's a lot of listening, like I've shared before. But at TAG, for me, this project's bridge as far as strategic initiatives, it was, co-developing our publications and content that showcase member innovation and philanthropy tech. That's not just content creation, it's a strategic project that builds TAG's reputation, deepens member relationships, and positions us as a thought leader in the sector. But the project I'm most proud of is how we've been responsive in our different programs in general. For instance, when we first learned of the attacks on nonprofits and DEI work, our first thought wasn't to stop doing the work, but reimagine what that looks like under these circumstances and with the rapid expansion of AI in our everyday lives. So we reviewed our resources and curriculum and identified ways to close certain knowledge gaps that we know leaders will need to be equitable practitioners of philanthropy tech work. That required an ability to understand the conditions and forces that could negatively impact our objectives for the program and developing the systems and capacity to deliver on the desired outcomes of the programs. Hugo's point about documentation is especially critical. I contribute grant writing for TAG, and securing funding requires translating program impact into language that funders obviously care about. That's the same skill that applies internally. And, if you can articulate what your project accomplishes in terms of leadership, in terms that the leader actually cares about, you won't get to do it the next time. So it's really critical for you to make sure that you're understanding what the business needs are of the different folks on your team who are helping to make decisions about your work, and you're speaking their language. It's not as easy as it looks, but as Ugo said, those coffee chats and those opportunities to have more casual, connections and building relationships with people in your organization can help you get closer to understanding exactly how should you best approach these initiatives to ensure that you have champions and people that support the work. So
Yep, 100% Gosi. These are the action steps that you can take this week and the next, kind of few weeks for leading projects, which, by the way, I do have a kind of 30, 60, 90-day plan that you can follow. I'll make sure I'll send a link to Carolyn, so that way when she sends all the resources, you'll have that there as well, so you can start working on something, right? So let's dive into some action steps for choosing leading successful projects. So one thing that you can do this week is audit your time. Spend 20 minutes writing down everything you did last week, then label each time as, was this a reactive or a strategic use of my time? Does it drain or add energy to you? Most people, when they do this exercise, they're shocked at how little time they spend on anything they actually initiated. It's usually initiated by others. So audit is your starting point, because from then you can figure out how you can do time blocks in your calendar to help you work on those strategic projects. Think first about improving processes, right? So don't necessarily think about right now overhauling the entire tech stack of your organization, right? Identify maybe one key area where you can enhance efficiency. So this is about making things work smarter, not harder, right? Think about where a small change could make a big difference in your workflow. Next, document the impact is crucial, right? So communicate your results clearly to stakeholders. Remember, this is not just about the numbers, it's about telling the story of your project success. Okay. And when it comes to a pilot project, propose a small initiative for testing. This is your chance to experiment and learn, and keep it manageable but valuable, right? Finally, like I mentioned before, sharing the knowledge is essential. Educate your peers about your outcomes of your project. This not only helps them, but also positions you as a resource and a collaborative leader. This is super important. So I think by taking these steps, you're not only going to lead projects more effectively, but also contribute to a better culture of continuous improvement and shared success in your organization. Any reinforcements here, Kelsey?
I was just kind of echoing this in the chat. These are such great steps to really get you on that path to dissecting the way that you work so that you can start to make those improvements. I think this is such a great metaphor for how we should be looking at all of our processes, from grant making to how we are looking at our professional development. Is the way that we're approaching this work effective, and really thinking through it step by step. So great process and activities. I'm excited to do my own. So thanks, Hugo.
Yeah. All right. And we are getting to the last bridge, the bridge of communication. So this bridge is about moving from being a technical explainer to being a strategic translator, right? So usually in accidental mode, you describe your work in terms of tasks and systems. In the intentional mode, you translate your work into mission impact. So this is a more of a mindset shift as much as a language shift. And this is probably the bridge that makes all the other bridges more visible to the people who matter at the organization that are going to help you kind of expand and grow in your career. So I wanna use the chat really quick for you all, and either type A, B, C, or D. It is how do you currently describe your role to a new colleague, right? So somebody came to your organization and says, so what do you do? Be honest. Pick the one that sounds most like what you actually say when somebody comes in to work at your organization. And here's what the poll results are telling us, right? If most of us describe our role in tasks, I manage systems or I fix problems, that's not a failure. That's the accidental pattern, right? It's describing what you do, not necessarily what you are accomplishing, right? So the shift here is simple to understand and takes practice to execute, right? So I manage the database becomes I help our team make data-driven decisions. I do IT support becomes I solve tech problems so staff can focus on serving our community. It's the same work. It's just completely different positioning. One describes a task. The other describes a contribution to the impact of your organization, right? You're not making stuff up. You're just changing the language so it's mission driven instead of task driven. So a question for you, Gozi, like how have you translated this work into mission impact at at TAG or previous organizations?
Mm. Well, for me, it was about the communication, honestly. Um, it was, I feel like that's where I feel most at home. And I want to say something really important about, about it. This is not just about spin or just making things sound fun. This is about making, sound like something that it is that it isn't, right? It's about finding the accurate story that connects what you do to what your organization cares most about. So it's not just the task, it goes deeper. And so for me, at least, at TAG, I facilitate conversations between subject matter experts, practitioners, and sector thought leaders. But when I describe that work, internally, I don't say I run panels. I say I create conditions for philanthropy to interrogate its relationship with technology. That's accurate. It's also strategic. It positions the work and, by extension, me as essential to the mission, not peripheral to it. So that's really important is that while we know that, anyone can certainly do a certain job, there's
Yep.
a unique
Mhm.
quality that we all bring to the work. And I think this is the way that you're able to try to define it by communicating it in terms of how does it align with the mission of the work.
Yep, 100%. And I mean, the shift here was realizing, at least for me, that my job wasn't to be technically accurate. Really, my job was to be clear strategically, right? It didn't, for the leaders of my organization, it didn't matter how, like, all the tech behind the scenes. It mattered how that helped solve problems that people were experiencing. So, for example, for me, it became like instead of saying, oh, we need to implement SSO, right? I started saying, hey, we need to make it easier for staff to securely access our tools. And that way they will have to remember 15 different passwords, right? At every job over the past like 10 years that I have had, I have successfully advocated for operations time during all staff meetings, right? So this could look like updates that you're making about things that are happening in operations that are going to be affecting or improving the lives of people. It could be launch and learns that you're doing about a new software that you're rolling out. It could be upcoming changes or projects. It could be feedback from staff, right? Taking time to actually get live feedback about how the operations are being run, how the technology is being run, what are some of the pain points going on. This is just information data that you need to help you build all those other bridges. But it shows that you're being strategic about how you're approaching this work. So when you think about the action steps that you have, and sorry if you thought that you weren't gonna have homework during this webinar, you just came to listen. I'm giving you homework, right? So this week, your job is to rewrite how you describe your work. So you can take your job description or even just how you answer what do you do and rewrite it in terms of mission impact, not tasks, think about outcomes, not systems. Think about the people that you serve. And share the new version with one person and see how it lands, right? It can be your best buddy, or it can be somebody else at the organization. Do it at your kind of next networking event. Uh, Maybe in your next meeting where a tech issue comes up, try this, right? Before you explain what's wrong with the system, explain what is costing the organization instead. That's key, right? Leaders are going to understand return on investment, right? So instead of saying our CRM has a data integrity issues, becomes, hey, our team is spending 3 hours a week manually correcting the data that should be automated. That's time that we kind of spend on donor relationships, right? That's going to speak to a leader of your organization instead of like this data integrity issue, right? So think about that kind of stuff, right? Yes, Christine, sounds exactly like that, right? You just kind of like think about it all the time. For me, for example, when I work at different organizations, I took onboarding as a way to kind of like bring all the information that was needed for someone to come in, right? So we use a Slack, so we use different applications on Slack. So even before the person started working, they were getting Slack messages to their email, to their personal email, about what it was going to be like the first week working there, creating a 30, 60-day plan, working with the different departments to set up meetings for them. So that way they have as much information as they could have, right? So that way I was able to set myself as kind of like, hey, technology and operations are key to helping develop new people, or helping the onboarding process so they can hit the ground running right away, right? Anything you want to reinforce here, Gozi?
I think it's going to be important to change the questions that you ask. What features do you need is a task question. What problem are we solving, and who does it affect is a strategic question. The question you lead with signals the kind of partner you're going to be. So it's really important to really think through those.
Yeah, 100%. So I want to hear from you all on the chat one more time. So which breach speaks to where you are right now? The skills, the relationships, projects, communications, just one, and go. Yep. Yep. Any patterns that you see, Gozi?
It seems like a lot of folks are relying on communication, and to Carolyn's point, it just means you're committed to your craft, and improvement, continuous improvement is great. But it's, that relationship piece, it's hard, especially in a digital world. But I'm not sure how many of you are working in the office too, but I think we had to relearn a lot of those communication and
Mm-hmm.
relationship building skills once we went back to the office. So I totally get it.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And look, with the communications bridge, this is not about like marketing yourself. Like it is, you're actually doing the work, right? Like you're doing the work, you just slightly shift in how you talk about it. So how you narrate your work really determines who gets to participate in shaping it, right? So you get to shape your own work, right? That's super, super important, right? I have one more thing for you all in the chat. And I tell you, um, one more. And this one is important. This one matters. So in the chat, I want you to write one action you're going to take this week after this webinar, not someday, this week, and be specific. It can be a schedule a coffee chat or virtual coffee chat with our program director. It can be sign up for one class. It can be rewrite your role description, type it out. When you write it down, even in a chat box, you're more likely to do it. That's the research talking, not me talking. Yeah.
And I love this. This is a great exercise, because it removes the excuse of not knowing what to do next. So you just told the room what you're going to do. That's accountability. And if you're part of any community like N10, tag the Accidental Techie newsletter, share it there too. Community accelerates transformation. And so having folks that can be there to be your accountability buddies to an extent are really critical. It gives you that extra push to try to get things done. And they're your champions, they're going to be there to support you. And if you have to change your deadlines, change things up a little bit, it's good to also have a community to express that and talk about it and talk through how you can ultimately meet your goals, even if you have to change it up a bit.
Yeah. I cannot emphasize enough that you're not alone, right? Lots of people are going through this. And I think finding community on it is going to be super important. That, yeah. And, let's be real, right, about this transformation, what it is and what it isn't, right? This is not a personality transplant, right? We're not trying to become someone else that we're not. It is really it's not magically finding more hours in your day. I know some of you are running operations, you're training staff, you're handling IT, you're writing grants, and you're doing 3 other people's jobs. I've been there, right? This transformation doesn't require more time. It's going to require different choices with the time that you have, right? It is small, consistent choices that you're going to make over a period of time, one bridge at a time, and compounds over months. The first thing you do this week is probably not going to feel significant, but the 37 that you do will do, right?
Oh, I will add that this transformation is also uncomfortable. It's really going to stretch you. And deciding you're worth investing in strategically, not just reactively, requires a kind of self advocacy that many of us, especially in nonprofit culture, weren't taught to do. So we were taught to serve, and service is beautiful, but you can't sustain service if you don't also advocate for yourself. Those aren't in conflict. Advocating for yourself and also sustaining the great work that you do. So, as nonprofit technology professionals, you have the power to connect strategies and people. By choosing to be intentional in your actions, you can create lasting impacts within your organizations and your communities. And so remember, the journey to becoming a leader starts with the choices you make today and service to your mission and to yourself, of course.
Yeah. I love all the stuff on the chat. Thank you all. Um, so let's talk about progress markers. How does it look like that you're making progress on this? So here's how you know how things are working. So in 30 days, you say at least one, you say no to one thing that didn't fit your strategic direction. That's it. Just one no, right? At 90 days, you have initiated one strategic project, not responded to one initiated one. So you have one strategic project that you yourself started yourself instead of somebody else initiated for you. And maybe this is like a 9 months or so, give it 3 or 4 months into it. Someone in leadership introduces you as a strategic partner, not just a third person, right? That moment, that shift in how people describe you, that's the signal that you know that you're moving from accidental to an intentional tech leader. And this is just kind of you're in the middle of the reactive grind at the 9 months, and we just want to validate that, right? Does this ring true to you, Gosi, or in your own experience?
Yeah, I think it feels like a lot when you're in that grind, but, I think it's important that, that 6 months of consistent, intentional choices looks very different from 6 months of waiting for things to change on their own. So, just reiterating the importance of just starting this week, and 6 months from now, you will have a different story to tell. So, there's no time like the present.
100%. And we're gonna put questions on the chat in a second, but Gosi is 100% right. Deciding that you are worth investing in strategically, not just reactively, that you deserve to be in those rooms before decisions are made, right? That's your expertise. Even if it's arrived accidentally, it is real and has value beyond fixing things.
Mm.
So what's going to be your first bridge? I'll leave you with this. I came into my career asking questions and building bridges between people, ideas, and systems. And that's what every one of you is doing. Whether you have the language for it or not, you are already the bridge builder in your organization. So this framework just gives you a map for doing it more intentionally and becoming that intentional tech leader that you want to be. So I really want to thank you all for being here. And I know we're going to be taking some questions. Just feel to put them in the chat. And Gosi and I will do our best to answer those.
I have one question. Go ahead and everyone put a question in the chat if you have questions for Hugo and Gozi. And we have one. All right, so I'm going to read this one out. Interested to hear about the choices we make when choosing what to outsource versus what to retain or bring in-house, especially with the limited resources that nonprofits have. Logic would say the stuff in incompetent and competent, those realms that we talked about earlier, should go out, but often that costs more than executives want to invest. So I think that's a really good question to start with. It actually kind of
Yep.
links with a question from registration where someone said there's a risk to not hiring a professional, maybe in some of these, like outsourcing some of these pieces. So how do you pitch that if you're also pitching yourself as the expert? So I
Yep.
think those are connected questions.
Let me take a stab at it really quick. So I think that's a great question, Brian. And I think the logic, yes, will say that in the short term. I think long term, I think you want to pitch to the leaders what is going to cause long term not being able to work in more strategic projects or really incurring technology debt. I will venture to say that most of our nonprofit organizations are on tech debt, right? We haven't invested in technology and we're paying for it eventually, right? So yes, I mean, if maybe you are early on and maybe you don't want to hire MSP, yeah, you can probably learn a bunch of different skills about fixing computers and all the different things that happen in an organization. However, if you're more a senior leader, I think you can make the case that you can either bring a part-time person, you can oversee an MSP that is a little bit that doesn't necessarily have to do everything. It just helps you with your leadership chops, so you accumulate less tech debt. So that way, when new things come to fruition, like 4 years ago with the pandemic, everything is happening with artificial intelligence, right? Nonprofits right now are scrambling, trying to figure out what to do because they did not invest on kind of like the tech forward things that needed to be invested in. So that's a decision that I think with leadership, I will say is like, hey, the short term solution, yes, that makes sense. But long term, we're going to be accumulating tech debt that is going to come bite us on the butt if we don't take care of it now.
That was a great response. My only thing I would add to what Ugo shared is these exercises I think are really critical for nonprofits to start engaging in as well. Thinking about that gap between the technical knowledge and the funding gaps that you have, and really thinking through what would it take for us to get to that point, to be able to have these things that we know are going to support our foundation or technology infrastructure, and then mapping it out, budgeting it out, because the reality is that more organizations are willing to start funding that, or you can get operational grants. But now with this information and this step-by-step process of what we need to do, the gaps that we have in funding to make it happen, the timeline that we've gotten from the due diligence we've done by reaching out to other peers in our networks, shout out to any folks who know tag folks or anyone in the LinkedIn or N10. Go to your peers, find out this information to help you build almost essentially kind of your guideline for how you go from point A to point B. And once you're able to do that, I think right then and there, you have an opportunity to make the case and do it from, again, a mission aligned standpoint. So for nonprofit folks, that's saying if we don't do this, we're not going to be able to scale our impact. We're not going to be able to keep our doors open if something X, Y, or Z happens and we don't have the technology to keep track of our, or to essentially safeguard the work that we've already started to do. So I really think folks need to, to have these long communications conversations about what it takes for you to build that, essentially that infrastructure, and ultimately try to work towards building it to, taking what you can do in-house and then thinking through what would be out-house. And if it's not available, doing what you can with what you have. There are many resources that are available, but
Mhm.
again, just thinking through it and ultimately trying to make it very detailed documentation.
I think one of the things I'm thinking about, like this has been a labor of love for me to do the accidental techie and doing the newsletters, just kind of like I know that I wish I would have this information, so that's kind of what I'm doing right now. So I might be doing like a 6 week pilot cohort of like how do you taking this framework and really taking it into like 6 weeks and doing a lot of work into that. So if you're interested in that, just let me know in chat. I'll let Carolyn also know a link for people to sign up for interest and we can figure something else out. But I really I know this is something that we need as accidental techies. So yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, I'm so sorry to have to start bringing this to a close because I feel like we could keep talking for another couple of hours about this. And thank you so much to everyone in the chat for sharing. I know that can be uncomfortable. We really, really appreciate it. I feel like we had this great conversation going in the chat today. We're going to keep that going over on Reddit after the webinar, so you can join us there. I want to make sure to go back over our learning objectives. I think we hit them all brilliantly. Thank you, Hugo and Gozi. So talking about moving from being the person who fixes things to being the person who has asked for strategic advice about IT, the 4 bridges for transformation, translating your work. A lot of people had put in the chat that they were going to work on communications, how you would start to talk about what you do in ways that hit better for this transformation and the mission. And then we went over an action that you will take this week, accountability with each other. As soon as you put it in, you feel a little bit more that you need to
Yep.
make it happen, and you start thinking about how is that going to happen for you. Before people go, I want to make sure to mention our webinar next month. We're going to turn back to cybersecurity at nonprofits. We'll have our Chief Technology Officer and cybersecurity expert, Matt Eshelman, here with his annual report on the trends he sees in the thousands of endpoint users we have over the course of 2025. So he can see new patterns, new scams that are coming in, what that means for your nonprofit. And of course, he'll be talking about the changes that AI tools are making, both in new scams and in new protections. So I'm going to drop that in the chat that you can find it on our website at communityit.com. And sign up for that now. It's at 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific on Wednesday, April 15th. We had a couple more questions come in that we didn't get to. So if you can join us over on Reddit, we're going to try and answer them over there for about the next 30 minutes or so. So I want to thank you, Hugo and Gozi, for joining us today. This was just such an amazing conversation. I really appreciate it. For everyone in attendance, we know that your time is a gift. You chose to spend an hour with us today to learn and think about and talk about these questions. So thank you so much. And we'll be back here next month with another webinar. So thank you. Thanks everyone very much. Thank you,
Thank you,
Gozi.
everyone. Have a good one. Mhm.
Thank you, Hugo.